Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar Programmatic 101, where we're going to talk about the evolution of programmatic media buying and focus on the what, the how, and the why of programmatic. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Gal Perlman, and I am head of content and marketing at AdClarity. I wrote a couple of successful ebooks, one which might interest you. It's an ebook on which this webinar is based off of. And at the end of the webinar, I'll explain to you how you can gain access to the ebook quickly and easily if you're interested. Okay, so we have a lot to cover today, so I think we should begin. Today, I'm truly going to cover the programmatic ecosystem as a whole. We're going to begin by looking at the traditional ways of media buying and the transitions that had to be made in order for us to get to where we are today. Then we're going to cover DSPs, DMPs, SSPs, ad networks, and ad exchanges in depth, defining what each one is and what their role and functionality is and the whole realm of programmatic. And after we talk about the skeleton of programmatic, we'll get to the programmatic section, which includes RTB and programmatic direct as well. And after that, we're going to be moving on to the mobile ecosystem. And finally, we'll observe some of the challenges and obstacles that a lot of digital media professionals are facing in today's programmatic world. So let's get started. So, the good old days. In the old times, if an advertiser wanted to buy inventory from a publisher, they'd have to do so manually and directly. And this was a cumbersome and tedious process, which involved negotiations, insertion orders, manual tracking, and long waiting periods, especially for premium sites. The benefits were so-so, as the advertiser had to track the results of each site manually in order to see where they were performing the best. Additionally, because advertisers bought on a CPM model, they bought impressions in bulk. So, regardless of who the user was, everyone was seeing the same ad. So, it was literally like a Jackson Pollock painting, finding the canvas you want to work on and just throwing all your paint on it, hoping that at least one drop reaches the right spot. And as time went on and the number of advertisers and publishers grew exponentially, it became nearly impossible for publishers to sell most of their inventory and for advertisers to handle the direct media buying process. They'd have to be in direct contact with thousands of publishers at a time in order to maximize the reach. And additionally, manually tracking all of these sites proved to be impossible. And so this issue paved the way for the ad network. An ad network is a company that connects advertisers to a large amount of publishers. It acts like a type of broker between the publisher and advertiser, buying the unsold or remnant inventory of the publisher in order to sell it to the advertiser. The ad network had a technology that enabled them to categorize the inventory, which they could package and sell to the advertiser. This benefited the advertiser because it allowed for them to extend their reach to numerous publishers all at once and have their ads targeted a little better based on the categorization of the ad network. And rather than having to track the campaigns on the advertiser's end, the ad network was now responsible for tracking and optimizing each campaign across multiple sites. But of course, history repeats itself. And as time went on, the number of ad networks grew and began flooding the market. And this put the publishers and advertisers in another predicament. Now they had to spend time trying to figure out which ad networks would give them the best bang for their buck. And this also meant that advertisers could be buying the same inventory on the same site more than once. Oh, and did I mention that the ad network takes a huge chunk of the ad profit from the advertiser? And thus, the ad exchange was born. Simply put, an ad exchange is a technology platform that facilitates in the automated buying and selling of inventory, often through real-time auctions. And unlike an ad network, purchasing isn't based on a CPM model, but rather per impression. An ad exchange is pretty much a giant pool of impressions that allows for advertisers to bid on each impression based on specific targeting criteria in real time. And this allows for the advertiser to make sure each ad they're serving is being served to the right person at the right place at the right time. So, with the ad exchange, the publisher is now able to gain more revenue by selling off more inventory, and the advertiser has greater transparency and control over their placement. And although ad exchanges made things better, advertisers and publishers still didn't have the tools and technology needed to really exhaust the full value and potential of ad exchanges. So along came the DSPs, or demand side platforms, and SSPs, or supply side platforms. And both of these platforms are really similar, but they just serve different audiences. DSP is for the advertiser, SSP is for the publisher. The DSP is sort of like a brain on the advertiser side in terms of the ad exchange. It's a platform for buyers which works with multiple ad exchanges and allows them to buy from multiple sources of inventory. For the advertiser, it's the interface which allows them to manage their bids, create targeting criteria, aggregate all their user silo data, do retargeting, optimize their campaigns in real time, and have access to results and data from DMPs. And this could be seen as a sort of ad network on crack without the huge markup and with automated technology capabilities. So, to sum it up, DSP is a one stop shop for advertisers. All they need to do is submit their ads and wait for the results. An SSP is pretty much the equivalent, but for the publisher side. So, whereas the DSP's goal is to buy ad impressions as cheaply and quickly as possible from the ad exchange, the SSP's goal is to maximize the price of their impressions. So, the SSPs enable publishers to have access to multiple ad exchanges, ad networks, and DSPs all at once, increasing the range of potential buyers. So now you understand the key players in the programmatic buying ecosystem. And all programmatic buying is the automated process of buying or selling media. And this process is reliant on these key players in order for it to work. So let's move on to the next, we're going to get in depth right now to the first one of these players, the DSPs and the DMPs. So we've established the very basic components that are necessary for the existence of programmatic buying. But we need to understand a few more in order to understand why things work the way they do and how they work the way they do. And this section is going to specifically focus on the core and functionality of the DSP. So I mentioned that the DSP acts as the brain while the ad exchange acts as the body. But the brain is composed of cells and neurons, and those are both critical to the functionality of the brain. And in this case, we're interested in the 1,000 billion neurons that provide us with the capacity to reason, comprehend, and make decisions. So whereas the DSP acts as the brain, it still needs these neurons in order to have a purpose. And in this case, data management platforms, DMPs, are the DSP's neurons. And they're what they give the DSP the access to tons of information and data. So a DMP is a very, very intelligent technological platform that takes data from first, second, and third party data providers. And it manages the data in an organized and meaningful manner so that the DSP can make the best purchase decisions possible on behalf of the advertiser. So let's talk about the data. What's a first-party data? First-party data is considered to be the most powerful and effective of the three types of data. First-party data is owned data, which means that the data is based on what you, as the advertiser, has collected on your audience. It's directed at site visitors or existing customers and is usually accessed through pixels, tags, cookies, and it can include information from CRS systems or web analytics. It is a crucial component to unique advertising and retargeting, which allows advertisers to leverage internal behavior data to meet their goals. Second-party data. So this is the newest form of data, which definitely has potential to be the most powerful one once it reaches its maximum capabilities. I'm sure that if you guys are into programmatic and are reading about data and all that, you guys are going to see second-party data being more and more prominent in the news and in the field. So all second-party data is somebody else's first-party data. And it's usually made available through an arrangement with partners or companies who have the same kind of target audience. So, for example, A luxury female clothing company might partner with a luxury jewelry company in order to broaden their advertising reach. And the consumer behavior and demographics should overlap, which would allow for the jewelry company to target the female clothing company's audience and vice versa. And finally, third party data. Third party data is a monster. It is the monster of all data providers. It is pretty much all the data that isn't in the realm of first party data, not connected to the advertiser, independent party, and it gathers data from a multitude of websites, vendors, and even offline. And it can be melded with first party data to provide an even more targeted campaign or be used on its own. And third party data provides the advertiser with additional consumer behavior that's unattainable through first party methods. It allows them to paint a more colorful picture of a user in order to give them the best fitted campaign based on their behavior. So let's take an example of combining third party data with first party data. So let's say somebody came to your site and they wanted to buy a TV, and you placed cookies on their browser to target them, to track them and retarget them. But what are you going to retarget them with? With the help of third-party data, you'll be able to gain a more in-depth look at their behavior. For example, like, what if you knew they're also in the market for a Porsche? You'd have information about their income, their type of lifestyle, the type of image they'd like to portray, and so forth. This could reinforce your decision to show them an ad of not just like some generic 42-inch TV, but of the most progressive, high-tech, luxurious, smart TV out there on the market, and the most expensive. And another way to use isolated third-party data is here's an example. So let's say you are a sewing machine company who needs to get new customers. You can find this consumer through third-party data by seeing if a consumer had visited any sites related to your target audience, such as a sewing magazine or crafts website. So regardless if they visit a photo website or sports website after, you'll be able to show your ad on the site because you know that they had recently visited a site that was correlated with your target audience. So regardless if they visit a photo website or sports website after you, you'll be able to show your ad on the site because you know that they had recently visited a site that was correlated with your target audience. So we know the first step, how to get the DMP and import its data. So what next? Now the DMP needs to segment the data and normalize the data. And all this means is that it has to find trends and segment your audience based on consumer behavior, such as a woman in California between the ages of 18 to 27 who use iPad, etc. And next, the DMP combines step 1, which is the accumulation of data, and step 2, which is the segmentation of data, to send instructions to the DSP. Then the DSP makes the decision on how much that impression is worth for the advertiser. And of course, the impression comes from the publisher's side or the SSP. But we're going to get to that in a moment. For now, I just want to make sure you guys have grasped a basic understanding of how the DSPs function. So next, we're going to see how the SSP functions and where the two meet. So this section covers the supply-side platform, SSP, and in layman's terms, an SSP is the publisher-side equivalent of a DSP whose main goal is to maximize revenue for the publisher and will make their life a whole hell of a lot easier. So how's it done? In today's online advertising ecosystem, there's a plethora of ad networks, DSPs, and ad exchanges, right? And if the publisher wants to sell their inventory to them without an SSP, it's going to be close to impossible to do this efficiently and effectively, because dealing with every platform individually is an extremely manual and labor-intensive process. If you remember from the beginning with the advertisers and when the amount of publishers increased, let's say exponentially, and they had to go one-on-one, and that's how the ad networks developed. So same kind of idea. It would take months for a publisher to do any sort of A/B testing to see who's bringing in the best results. It would require a ton of time from the media seller to negotiate, test, and run every single deal. And it would be almost impossible to optimize the inventory as the market is so volatile. Results that aren't based on real-time data are irrelevant. And, did I mention that if they did want to do any sort of automatic optimization, they'd have to integrate some very, very heavy and complex technology into their server? So the SSP comes along and says, hey, we can not only manage your entire inventory in an automated manner, but we can also bring you premium traffic, lots of it, take all manual labor off the table, bring you the technology you need, and make you money. So now all the publisher has to do is provide the inventory for the SSP, and the SSP does the rest of the work. And this is my favorite part. I get very excited because this is where it gets very, very cool. So you see, there is a special and complex algorithm consisting of three main variables embedded in the SSP, which decides who gets to win the impression. So think of it sort of a multiple regression analysis and multiple correlations. So you have three variables that you want to see, and you want to see which variable has the highest correlation with the output, or in this case, the maximum revenue. And every single time an impression is put up for auction, the results change based on the values of the variables. And the three variables are RTB, payouts, and DMPs. So regarding RTBs, I'm not going to get into too much detail here because I'm going to explain real-time bidding later on in the webinar. But all RTB is the means in which an impression is bought and sold in real time. And this process takes place in an auction where it's being bid on. And just like in real life, the person who has the highest bid wins the deal. So in advertising terms, the advertiser who places the highest bid on that impression wins the space to put their ad up. And I want to make a note here really quick. So the highest bid through RTB is usually the winner. Probably 90 to 92% of all win impressions are based on the highest bid. However, we're going to be covering the two other variables anyways because they are important, and although not often, they do occur. Payouts. Payouts usually only happen when the advertiser is buying on a CPA or CPL basis. And the advertiser usually offers to give the publisher a certain percentage of the profit. So in the case where there is a tie for the bid, the SSP will sell the impression to the third party who has the highest payout rate. This case happens very rarely, but the concept still exists as an option in the ecosystem. I think it's pretty cool, so I just wanted to talk about it. And next, we're going to talk about the DMPs. So have you ever been to one of those booth games at a carnival where they give you a colored ball and you have to throw that colored ball in a matching colored cup? Whatever. Easy enough. Easy enough. You know what the color is that you need to target based on the color of the ball, right? But what if you didn't know the color of your ball and you had to throw it in the correct cup? So you'd be aiming at literally nothing with the hope that you may have gotten the ball in the right cup. So in order to win, you'd have to know what the color of the ball is. So this is the role that the DMP plays with the SSP. The DMP in this case provides the SSP with behavioral data about a certain user and colors or segments them. So now that the user's color is known, the SSP knows where to direct their traffic in order to increase the likelihood of success. I just got a comment from somebody that they're a little bit confused. So let me put it in different terms. Okay. So the SSP has contact with multiple ad exchanges, DSPs, and ad networks, right? So it wants to get the ad that has the highest likelihood for a conversion. And without the information from the DMP, it wouldn't be able to know how to segment the user and would just throw the impression at any DSP, ad exchange, or ad network. But with the information on the user, it would know which mediator would be the most applicable for this inventory to increase the likelihood of conversion. Cool? Okay, so now you understand the three major inputs that manipulate who wins the impression. And you also know that in most cases, RTB wins. And to sum it up, the SSP is a platform which helps publishers sell their ads to huge pools of buyers more than they would have on their own. And they do so primarily through RTB so that the publisher can get the most value and money for each piece of inventory. Now we're on ad exchanges. So we already know how and why the ad network came to be. If you remember, there's so many advertisers and publishers in the ecosystem, it was impossible for advertisers to handle the direct media buying process, and it was impossible for publishers to sell most of their inventory, so came the birth of the ad network. And for advertisers, this was very good because it enabled them to extend their reach and reach a larger number of publishers through one platform. And for small and medium publishers, it was also very good. And this was because the publishers had a very hard time selling their inventory to advertisers. And now they were able to sell their inventory as part of a larger package on behalf of the ad network. So, how does the ad network actually work? Firstly, the ad network needs access to a huge audience. This audience is brought by the publishers, and along with it, an abundance of consumer behavior data. Next, the ad network would look at all the inventory that it aggregated, and they would use an algorithm to forecast how much this inventory would be available in the following months per each publisher. Next, they'd aggregate this data based on segment, which they're able to do with the use of consumer behavior data. And then they'd package this segmented data based on things such as age, gender, demographics, etc., mark them up and sell them to advertisers. So it sounds fine, but there is a small problem. So A is obviously for publishers, A is obviously for advertisers, B is obviously for publishers. So let's start with the advertisers. So first of all, most ad networks don't want advertisers to know where their ads are getting published. And this is for several reasons, the most important being that if you as an advertiser knew which publishers your ad network was working with, you'd be able to pass the ad network and work directly with the publishers, eliminating the need for the ad network. And because of this, advertisers can't identify which inventory works best for them. And because the advertisers buy inventory in packages, and these packages often include remnant inventory and premium inventory, advertisers can't really know what the value of any single impression is and can't really obtain too many insights. And additionally, because there's almost no transparency and advertisers don't know what sites their ads are running on, they can be taking a huge risk that their ads are showing up on nefarious and very shady and sleazy sites. Next, we're going to go to publishers. So publishers didn't have it much better. The lack of transparency, by the way, those two little half moons with eyelashes are closed eyes. So the lack of transparency also ran on the side of the publishers. They were unable to identify which advertisers were bringing in the best results and had to take the chance that the ad network would bring in very low quality ads, which could in turn lower the reputation of the publisher's site, decrease any likelihood of conversions, and so forth. And because publishers are working with multiple ad networks at once, they had to be constantly evaluating which ad network was bringing them the best results. And this was a very manual and time consuming process. And most importantly, ad networks, more often than not, are also working with a chain of other ad networks, and they're buying and selling inventory from one another. And each one of these ad networks takes a cut from the publisher, leading the publisher to receive lower and lower revenue. And let's not forget the challenges that the ad networks themselves had. Although their plans seem to be kind of seamless, let's remember that there's no such thing as concrete forecasting. It's a prediction, it's not an accurate science. So, of course, forecasting publisher inventory was often faulty. And because of this instability, their packages were inconsistent and they were either overselling or underselling inventory. So, you see a problem. What started off as a solution turned out to be a little more detrimental to its key players than intended. And this is where the ad exchange came into the picture. So, as we talked about, the ad exchange is a platform, which facilitates the buying and selling of inventory through real-time auctions. Unlike ad networks, which don't work in real time and sell inventory in bulk, ad exchanges buy and sell per impression, and this gives the advertiser complete control over each ad. They have specific criteria they specify ahead of time so that each impression is bought with a real purpose. It eliminates the traditional methods that provoked wasted impressions, and now they're able to choose exactly who can see their ad, where they'd see it, how they'd see it, when they'd see it. So not only do they get to choose each and every impression they're buying, they also decide how much they want to pay for each impression and only pay for the impressions that they want. Ad exchanges conduct auctions for every single impression, and just like in real life, the highest bidder wins the prize. So now, rather than the publisher selling 10,000 or the ad network selling 10,000 impressions in one bulk package and not necessarily getting the best bang for their buck, I mean, the advertiser wouldn't necessarily get the bang for their buck because not all impressions are created equal. Each impression is auctioned off to the highest bidder, and this ensures that the publisher is getting the maximum profit based on market values. So, just to sum it up, I'm going to talk about a few key differences between ad exchanges and ad networks. Because the first one is CPM. So, because each impression is sold to the highest bidder, there is more competition between the advertisers. And if they know they want it, they'll try to outbid each other. And this will raise the CPM for the publishers. Advertisers can now buy in impressions and buy the impressions that they're interested in. And rather than buying in bulk from ad networks, they have complete control over their impression buys, which allows them to buy at a much higher price. Transparency for all. Because ad exchanges provide both the advertisers and publishers with transparency and visibility, advertisers are now able to gain insights as to which were the best performing sites and help them optimize for future campaigns. So, publishers are able to see which advertisers are driving the highest CPM to their sites, giving them the insights they need to make better decisions regarding which advertisers they want to encourage to their site. And lastly, if you remember, when I introduced the ad exchanges, I said that they're a direct connection between advertisers and publishers. Ad networks, on the other hand, can work with multiple intermediaries, causing the distance between the advertiser and publishers. And the problem with that scenario is that each middleman takes a huge cut of profit, and that lowers the revenue for the publisher, costs more for the advertiser. So the ad exchange creates an environment for a more efficient relationship and enables the publisher to make more money. And now we're going to get to the good stuff. We're going to get to programmatic buying. I know that you've probably seen a million definitions for programmatic buying. Some of you may fear programmatic buying because of the explanations. I'm telling you, I am not being like tawdy or anything, but there is one definition for programmatic buying. It is the simplest thing in the world. So before I tell it to you, I just want to reiterate that we established that in traditional media buying, the buying and selling process was a tedious, time-consuming, inefficient, not promising, and it didn't necessarily yield maximum results for either the publisher or advertiser. And of course, everything was done manually. So programmatic buying, all programmatic buying is the automated process of media buying using technology. That's literally all it is, making media buying an automated and much more efficient process. It's a concept, it's an umbrella term that encompasses a whole world beneath it. To those of you that are confused right now and think there's much more to programmatic buying, which there is, I need you to understand that the actual definition of programmatic buying is simple, and I can't reiterate that enough. The automated process of media buying, period. That being said, there's different types of programmatic buying, such as real-time bidding, RTB, which I'm sure you've all heard of. We'll get to this in a moment. So, one more time, programmatic buying, automated process of media buying using technology. All right, we have that settled, so let's begin. A lot of time people say that programmatic buying is a synonym for RTB. And now that you know the definition of programmatic, I am certain, or I hope, that you'll be more than willing to understand that it's not. Real-time bidding is a type of programmatic buying. It falls under the umbrella of programmatic buying. So, what the hell is RTB? So, real-time bidding is the buying and selling of ad space per impression in real time through auctions held in ad exchanges, DSPs, or SSPs. And RTB is not its own platform. It's a type of technology that ad exchanges, DSPs, and SSPs integrate in order to perform these auctions. So how does it work? All right. I'm going to give you the simplest version of how the RTB works. And keep in mind, this entire process takes less than 80 milliseconds. That's about 4 times faster than it takes to blink your eye. All right, so are you ready? Okay, so it all starts with the publisher. The publisher chooses an SSP to work with, such as Pubmatic, and places a tag in the ad space or inventory that they want them to be in charge of. So a user goes to the publisher's site, and before the page even finishes loading, the request to fill that vacant ad space has been sent to the SSP. The SSP finds out information about the user through its DMP. It gathers generic information such as demographics, time of day of the week, and so forth. And once all of this information is gathered, the SSP sends the request to the ad networks, ad exchanges, or DSPs it's working with. So the SSP sends the request over to its partners. And don't forget, if they send it over to an ad exchange, the ad exchange could be working with several DSPs simultaneously. Each player on the buying side evaluates the bid according to their own algorithms and targeting parameters that the advertiser set previously. For example, the advertiser may have wanted to target men between the ages of 30 to 47 who have a high income, or maybe the advertiser only wanted to target people who surfed on luxury watch websites, or maybe the advertiser only wanted to target people who are shopping on their site earlier. Possibilities are endless. So if you remember, the DMPs are what provide the DSPs with behavioral data about a consumer, and the DSPs are what make the decision. So after the ad exchange sends the bid request to the DSP makes a decision based on complex algorithms, which decide if the user is relevant for the advertiser. And if it is, then the DSP places a bid on the ad space. The maximum bid amount is actually set previously, and whichever advertiser places the highest bid wins the ad space. And it's important to note that not every bid is created equally. Sometimes an advertiser is actually going to pay more for a bid when they know that the user is extremely relevant for them. Common sense. And then the winner sends instructions on how to retrieve the creative to the ad exchange, which then sends it to the SSP, which then sends it to the publisher. And finally, the ad is shown to the user. One thing before we go on is that I want to talk about, I want to get a little in depth about something that's kind of interesting to me that a lot of people skip over. It's about the part like when I was talking about when the SSP sends the request to the ad networks or any of the mediators it's working with. So an SSP can distribute a request in two ways, and either round robin or it's simultaneously. And if you look at this infographic, you'll see how the SSP has connections with multiple platforms, right? DSP1, DSP2, Ad Exchange 1, Ad Exchange 2, Ad Network 1. It could be a million. If the SSP decides to send the request in a round robin manner, that means that each of these entities have a ranking based on priority. For example, like the SSP could send the request to DSP1, and if the bid falls through, they'll send it to Ad Network 1. And it really depends what their order of preference is. Or they can send out the requests to all their partners simultaneously. And the reason it's important to note this is because if you're an advertiser and you're working with a certain platform that works with a specific SSP that has traffic you want, you need to make sure that you're not on the bottom of their list in case they do a round robin. You need to be working with the highest ranking DSP, ad exchange, or ad networks, and the eyes of the SSP. All right, so there's no dispute. RTB is a much more efficient way of buying and selling media when compared to traditional media buying. Advertisers no longer have to work directly with publishers and negotiate. They no longer have to buy bundled packages with relevant impressions, which lead to wasted ad spend. And with RTB, they're able to have enhanced targeting capabilities, minimize wasted impressions, increase the reach and frequency, have transparency to gain the insights they need to constantly optimize their campaigns, and they choose which impression they want to buy. And publishers do have the same deal. They don't want to waste time and energy trying to contact and manage and do negotiations with advertisers. They have access to a much larger audience of potential buyers. They have a higher likelihood to sell more inventory. And most importantly, because advertisers bid on inventory, the publisher is receiving the maximum market value per impression. So that being said, like all things great and small, there's no ups without the downs. So here's the deal. Before programmatic came around, all advertisers cared about was the publishers. They cared about the publisher's name, the reputation, the size. Like, it had to be the Bloomingdale's, or I don't know what's popular now. Advertisers wanted to buy inventory space because of the publisher. And because of this, the majority of all ad spend was going to the premium publishers. No one had any interest in working with middle or long tailed sites. And all of this changed with programmatic. Um, Rather than obsessing over the status of a publisher, buyers began to shift their focus to the audience, and this was a hard hit. This was a hard hit for premium publishers. You see, buyers realized that it didn't matter if they were buying premium spots on premium sites if the user wasn't relevant for them. All they cared about was reaching the right user at the right place at the right time, and buying from premium publishers just wasn't enough to do this. So a few things happened because of this. So first, premium publishers began to lower their inventory costs because they couldn't compete with natural changes. However, because the amount of internet users increased exponentially, it sort of weighed out the situation. Their costs may have decreased slightly, but quantity increased immensely and kind of balanced out. And secondly, because buyers cared about the audience, it gave a chance for the little man, for the middle and long tailed publishers. And how did they do this? Through retargeting. So buyers could now target their exact users on any site, no matter where it stood on the totem pole, through retargeting through retargeting tactics. And so this specific method of doing this is a little controversial, but it's also pretty damn smart. It's called data leakage. What the buyers would do is this. So they'd buy ad impressions on premium sites. They'd probably set their bid ceiling very high so they'd win. And because the ad was being served through a third party platform, the buyer could drop a tracking code on their creative to cookie the user without the publisher knowing. And once the lead was being tracked, they pretty much had no use for the premium publisher because they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was where the user was going, and oftentimes they're going to middle or long tailed sites. So the advertiser would stop working with that premium publisher because they got the information they needed. And then they'd immediately launch an RTB campaign that would look for the users with cookies through various ad exchanges and all that. And once they found them, they would place a much lower bid because it wasn't a premium publisher to reach them. So, on the one hand, there's a huge debate on whether RTB is hurting or benefiting the publishers, but I personally strongly believe it's the latter. Yeah, premium publishers have to lower their costs and deal with data leakage. However, with the growing number of users on the internet, they're actually still making a profit. Additionally, RTB sort of leveled out the playing field. It gave a chance for the smaller publishers who no one even considered before. And the fact that the disparities between the big and medium or small publishers is decreasing is absolutely phenomenal and really can only bring benefits to the ecosystem. All right, next we're going to talk about another type of programmatic buying, which is called programmatic direct. You've probably heard nuances of this term, programmatic premium, premium direct, automated guaranteed, programmatic reserved. So they all mean the same thing, but for our sake, for consistency, we're just going to go with programmatic direct. So we've understood that with RTB, there's no guarantee that you're going to get the ad spot of your choice. And we've also understood that there's no direct relationship between the advertiser and the publisher. They're still always meeting through an ad exchange or some other mediator, and sometimes multiple mediators. And something I didn't mention in the last chapter was, even though the RTB ecosystem provides transparency into the media buying ecosystem, it still doesn't provide publishers with the visibility they need to understand why advertisers are buying their inventory. And it also doesn't provide advertisers with the actual site their ad appears on, only the category. And we've seen that in the reality of it all, although I argued that RTB is actually really beneficial for middle and long tail publishers, it kind of screws the premium publishers, and the publishers are fully aware of this. So we see that although RTB has stellar technology, it still has some faults and room for improvement. And we also have to remember that RTB isn't the only way that brands buy media. A lot of the top brands and advertisers still do prefer to buy directly from the premium publishers in order to guarantee their spot. But if we remember from the first section of this webinar, the traditional direct media buying process is lengthy, tedious, and very inefficient. And so this is where programmatic direct comes in. So what is programmatic direct? So programmatic direct is the automated process of direct media buying, where the advertiser still buys directly from the publisher. Sorry about the wonderful line. But without the need for insertion orders and giving them the transparency and insights they need to constantly optimize their campaigns in real time. This type of programmatic means that when the advertiser buys inventory from the publisher, they're guaranteed that spot, unlike RTB, which doesn't have a guarantee at all. And because it's programmatic and still involved in the programmatic world, DMPs still play a huge role in providing advertisers and publishers with the first, second, and third party data they need to enhance their targeting capabilities. So now publishers are able to work directly with the advertisers and see exactly what they're looking for and why they're purchasing their inventory. And this allows for publishers to find relevant advertisers, provide more relevant packages, and promote their own premium inventory. So it's as if to say that now the advertisers know exactly what they want. Publishers can provide those wants with more guaranteed inventory than they would get in the auction place, providing, of course, that the advertiser is willing to pay for it. Another common notion is that programmatic direct is only about premium spots. But something I strongly believe in is that premium is in the eye of the beholder. What may be trash to one buyer may be premium to another, and it really depends on what the buyer is looking for and what they need. So really, in programmatic direct, there's a premium for everyone. So I do want to get more in detail and break it down into simpler terms and to talk about how programmatic actually works, but I'm really scared we're going to run out of time today, and I kind of do want to get to the next section, which is the mobile. So if you are interested in learning more about programmatic direct, don't forget to check out the ebook, and at the end of the webinar, I'll show you how to get access to that ebook. So right now, we're going to talk about mobile. There's absolutely no way I couldn't include a section about what's going on in the mobile world, and unless you live under a rock, you must be aware of how big mobile advertising is becoming. So here are just a few statistics from around the web to demonstrate my point. I'll let you guys read this on your own. So take a minute just to read them out. I don't need to read what's on the screen. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds. Okay, so I'm not going to keep reiterating the importance of mobile marketing. We all get it. But we're going to focus on programmatic buying, and I'm going to shove one more statistic in your face. So it is predicted that by the end of 2015, mobile will surpass desktop display ad spending in terms of programmatic ad expenditure. To be as precise as I can be in regards to forecasting, mobile will account for 56.2% of the total programmatic digital display ad spending by the end of 2015. The concept of programmatic buying, as we learned in previous chapters, is pretty much the same for the mobile world. Ad exchanges, SSPs, DSPs are all playing the same role, except that they're focused on mobile. And the types of programmatic that are applicable for desktop display are still relevant for mobile. With that being said, there's a few key distinctions that must be made in regards to the mobile ecosystem. And I apologize for the visuals. Once again, this is really about the content. So let's look at the first picture on the left of the two kids. Programmatic in the mobile world is still relatively novice. It sort of looks like what the desktop display advertising industry was 10 years ago. In the mobile landscape, you have the options of choosing in-app inventory, video inventory, or web browser inventory. And although video is a huge deal, I'm going to focus on in-app and web browser. Native advertising on mobile is a must. When it comes down to mobile, apps win. And when it comes down to apps, Facebook wins. Google and Facebook together make up almost 70% of the mobile ad market. And there's a serious cookie problem. Most mobile web browsers do accept first-party cookies. However, different browsers behave differently with third-party cookies, and most importantly, cookies don't exist in the app world. I'll get to that in a minute. And last, but certainly not least, is data. The types of data available on mobile are they're pretty different from desktop data, and it enables mobile marketeers to try new targeting and optimization methods. So let's get started. So we understand that mobile marketeers have two main ways to advertise, either through mobile apps or mobile web. So mobile apps. Just to give you an idea of the significance of mobile apps, in 2013, 80% of the time spent on mobile devices was spent on apps. And in 2014, it increased to 86%, while mobile web browsing fell to 14%. And I'll give you one guess as to who is dominating the mobile app industry: Facebook. So currently, Facebook is the most downloaded app in the entire world and touts its 1.9 billion monthly active users, and it continues to grow every month. And there's a reason that this is really interesting to us, because in 2012, when Facebook first launched its mobile ad business, it made close to nothing. 2 years later, in 2014, it made over $12.47 billion in revenue, and 69% of that revenue was attributed to mobile. And in my opinion, the most interesting is that during the final few months of 2014, they actually served 65% less ads than the previous year, but the average cost of those ads was 335% higher. Pretty much the underlying rules for neoclassical economics. Here's the basic supply and demand. And you cut down supply, demand can stay the same, and prices increase. Next, we're going to look at mobile web. Mobile web is pretty much like browsing the web on your desktop, just on your mobile. It's just smaller, the site needs to be mobile responsive, and it's usually touchscreen sensitive. It has quite a bit of convenient features that enable users to perform an action in a touch of a button, like placing an order, dialing a phone number, etc. And usually companies always go for the mobile website first because it doesn't require building an app. It builds up a web presence, it's instantly available, it's compatible with almost every mobile device, and it's just much easier to manage and maintain. And when it comes down to the mobile web industry, Google wins by far. And although Google's mobile search ad spending is around 65%, it has been on a constant decline when compared to its 2012 figures of 83%. And the reason for this, as discussed before, is that more and more people are going to their mobile apps over web browsers. Google stays pretty private regarding their mobile share in revenue, but what we do know is that they are aware of this decline and probably have some tricks up their sleeves, such as potentially acquiring InMobi, one of the biggest mobile ad networks in the world. So next, we're going to talk about the cookie problem, which sounds like an oxymoron because cookies aren't problems. Cookies are super important in the world of advertising, especially when it comes to retargeting. And although cookies work wonders when it comes to desktop, it's a little bit of a different story in the mobile world. In the mobile world, cookies exist only on the mobile web, and the reach is super limited. And when it comes to accepting third-party cookies, every browser behaves differently. I mean, for example, Safari doesn't even accept third-party cookies, and it's one of the most used smartphone browsers. Two more big issues. Browsers don't share cookies with each other, and they reset every time you close the browser. So now I'm going to talk about tracking in mobile apps. So I'm going to start off with an analogy before I start explaining what I believe is the serious mess in the mobile app world. So imagine you live in a kingdom. You have one king who rules them all. Ton of people living in the village who follow and report to the rules of the king. Things are in order. People may be living on their own, maybe living their own lives and doing their own things. But in regards to the important stuff, food, income taxes, everything is tracked, reported, and standardized. Things function. So this analogy represents cookies and tracking in the browser world. So now imagine the same kingdom, but this time all the villagers also play the roles of kings. Now there's one piece of land with hundreds of kings, each setting their own rules and regulations within their castle and property. There is no one ruler to rule them all in this scenario. It's anarchy. It's literally a case where everyone makes the rules for themselves. And because this is the case, no one is collaborating with each other or giving other kings inside information about what's going on in their own kingdom. And this is kind of what tracking looks like in the mobile app world. There's no such thing as industry standards in regards to mobile app tracking, so every app is in charge of figuring it out their own way. Additionally, apps can't share their tracking data with other apps, so their information stays siloed within their own app. And you can imagine how difficult this must be for advertisers when they're trying to track their users across different apps in order to do proper ad targeting. So notice that I haven't used the word cookies yet when talking about mobile app tracking. And that's because cookies don't really exist in the mobile app world. Rather, there's alternative tracking methods used such as device fingerprinting, MAC addresses, open device identifier numbers, Apple IFA and IVA, and Android refers. So I'm not going to get into all these tracking methods, but you guys should check out this article from Search Engine Watch. It's incredible. It talks about the pros and cons of each one of them. So you get the issue. Tracking is super inconsistent in the mobile world and makes it very hard for advertisers to do ad retargeting. Marketeers have to figure out a way to integrate all of these identifiers in order to have one major identifier that they can use across channels. But, of course, there's exceptions to this problem. Facebook and Google. So, to be honest, I don't really have a lot to say about Google that isn't already owned. They own everything, and because they own everything, they have special benefits that allow them to overcome the technical challenges that many others face in the industry. And Facebook. Remember when I said that the two biggest contributors to helping Facebook conquer the mobile app landscape are native advertising and retargeting capabilities? This is where we get to it. So there's something called the website custom audience, and don't get this confused with Facebook Exchange. I don't care about FBX. It's not relevant for the mobile world at all. I don't care. So what WCA does is that it allows marketeers to target their audience through Facebook ads based on their own data, which could have been taken from the CRM, their CRM, first-party data, their email database, and so forth. And this means that you can target people who've been on your website but aren't your Facebook fans or other offline customers through Facebook. So pretty much you take your list of customers and potential customers and anyone who visited your website and got cookied and upload it into Facebook. And you can segment your visitors based on which pages they visited, what section of the website they were on, and so forth to show them highly relevant ads. And Facebook creates your audience based on your list, and voila, you're able to do ad retargeting in the most extreme and precise manner without bombarding users with email. And as you know, relevancy is the key to positive ROI on Facebook. The more relevant the ad is to the user in their buying cycle, the more likely they're going to buy. Next, we have data. You have a general idea by now of how and where data is gathered from. I'd like to mention one more important characteristic unique to mobile, and that's location-based data. People go with their mobile devices everywhere, and that's something advertisers can leverage big time. If you can combine location-based data with other types of data, such as behavioral, advertisers can send even more hyper-targeted ads to their consumers that offer the right product at the right place at the right time. So an example is a retailer can combine a user's purchase history with their location and can send them personalized offers whenever a customer walks into a store. It's the ideal situation for brands that want to be involved in their customers' and prospects' buying journey. Okay, so we understood that programmatic is pretty much the same when it comes to mobile, albeit in a much less mature stage. What really shakes things up is the uniqueness of the mobile advertising industry in and of itself. The technological limitations that mobile sets for itself makes it difficult for programmatic to function as it does in the desktop world. So we saw that mobile browsers and mobile web apps are completely separate in terms of data tracking, really anything. We know that retargeting is something that is very rare in the mobile world unless you're Google or Facebook. And we know that programmatic won't reach its full potential unless things change. Luckily, ad networks and other platforms are aware of this, and are beginning to develop technologies which enable them to track users from app to app, collecting data and tracking information along the way. All right, the final section of this webinar is about the obstacles and challenges in the programmatic world. So, like everything in life has a yin and yang, and this includes programmatic. Yes, programmatic has made some revolutionary changes in the way media buying is done that benefits the entire online advertising ecosystem. But it also comes with it also comes a new type of black market where nefarious people take advantage of human error, the rise of automation, and the decline in human to human communication. The most common type of fraud, and often synonymous with the term, is non-human traffic, also known as bots. So we'll definitely be focusing on bots, but I'm going to also take note of some less popular fraud types, which are also extremely detrimental to the honest players and the integrity of the industry. So we're going to start with the non-human traffic and bots, also known as click fraud. So it's easy to understand why non-human traffic, from this point on we'll call them bots, tops the list of concerns for advertisers and brands. They currently account for 90% of all the fraud in the online advertising industry, and advertisers are paying and expecting that their ads will be viewed by actual people who might potentially buy their product. However, this isn't always the case, as bots account for about 11% of all display ad views. So bots are computer software applications that are driven by code which impersonate human behavior. They're pretty advanced. They can be very hard to detect, especially as they become better at mimicking user behavior throughout the years. The type of fraud that bots engage in is called click fraud, which occurs when the bot clicks on an advertisement to drive up the cost for the advertiser without ever having the intention of conducting business with them. So keep in mind that bots aren't humans. They can run forever and at extremely high pace. There's different types of bots, such as phantom bots, which travel around the web, viewing and clicking ads, deceptive bots, which can mimic a human behavior, and vader bots. Next, we're going to look at ad injections, which, in my opinion, I just think that they're most fascinating. So, when you download some file or app off the web and it makes you run and install about 1 million pop-ups and you have to read their novel on terms and conditions, which nobody ever does? Well, sometimes when you download apps off the internet, they'll bundle themselves into an installer, which will persuade you to install additional programs onto your computer. And this is where not reading the terms and conditions or pop-ups and just clicking next, next, next comes in. So really, when you think you're getting what you're looking for, you may be, but you're also getting much more. So I don't know if you've heard of this little bastard, but I'm talking about ad injectors. So you see, this is, if we look to the left, this is Dell's site. And you see on the top what's outlined in red. Take a moment and think about it. Do you really think that Dell acts as a publisher for its competitors? Like, do you think that Nike would host ads from Adidas or from Puma? Or Apple will put Lenovo, sorry. I don't think so. So this is what ad injectors do. They inject ads onto sites without permission and without the publisher ever knowing, and therefore without ever paying the publisher. So here's another example. So if we look to the right, let's say you're searching for boots on Google. So instantly Google comes back with results, but in even less time, the ad injector pushes forth its own ads and replaces those that were paid for it in Google. So who gets paid here? Normally the money would go to Google, right? But Google isn't making any money here. Why? Because the ads were never put up by Google in the first place. The ads belong to an entirely independent third-party service who hijacked the Google search page and placed their own ads as a way of making money. So let's reiterate this. The ads on Google have not actually been placed there by Google. Why do advertisers do this? Well, this is a really attractive scheme to advertisers because now they're being offered inventory in places that they'd never been offered before. For example, not too long ago, I remember a Target ad actually showed up on Walmart's homepage. It's pretty shocking. So why do ad injectors do this? So on one hand, ad injectors could sell inventory directly to the publishers. In fact, if the price is good enough, advertisers may even say yes. It would indeed be more appealing to the advertisers, as these ad injectors would be able to offer up space that would otherwise be impossible to attain, such as the Walmart, the Target showing up on Walmart. Additionally, the spots on the page would most likely be an attractive aspect to advertisers. But this isn't what ad injectors do at all. Rather, they work through an intricate and complex web of ad networks, ad exchanges, and other mediators. There's a lot of benefits for the mediators, the strongest being the ability to increase efficiency. But because these webs are so complex, the advertiser may be going through 3 or 4 mediator before getting to their publisher, and the advertiser may never even suspect that they're going through an ad injector. The next type of fraud is called impression fraud, also known as ad stacking and ad stuffing. This is also a very common form of fraud, and it occurs when publishers stack ads on top of one another, and even though only the top ad is shown to the users, advertisers think that their ads are also getting shown. So the image shown on the screen shows an example of an ad blocker showing how many ads are being served on the page or being attempted to being served on the page. They do this by placing their ads in invisible frames with 0 to 0 pixels and 0 visibility. And this way they can load lots and lots of ads on the page. And furthermore, publishers can use bots to load the pages so that the ads get viewed, costing advertisers more for each impression viewed. So this enables publishers to sell a huge amount of inventory on ad exchanges, which are sold but never seen. Lastly, we're going to talk about ad viewability. This really isn't a type of fraud. I see it more as a challenge that's currently being acknowledged by the key players in the industry. In the past few years, statistics about display advertising have been a hot topic. Why? Because the figures are shocking. For example, you know that you're more likely to survive a plane crash than click on a banner ad or get into MIT or Harvard. For someone who lives and breathes in the digital advertising world, this stuff is horrifying. And what I think is even more daunting is that while global display ad spend is expected to reach over $70 billion in 2016, over 56% of all ads served are not actually viewable. So according to the IAB, at least 50% of an ad needs to appear in the user's browser window for at least 1 second. And in the case of videos, at least 2 seconds. So this means if your ad shows up on someone's browser but is placed below the fold and the user hasn't scrolled, no ad viewability. And simply put, just because an ad is served doesn't mean it's viewed. Although all of these challenges did exist in the pre-programmatic era, they've been exacerbated by the current conditions in the industry, specifically the decline in human-to-human contact. Fraudsters can easily hide their identities and motives to remain undetected by brands and ad exchanges. In order for programmatic to overcome fraud, an audit trail must be incorporated in the supply chain. There must be more transparency in the system and a way to recognize if players participating in the programmatic game, well, if they should be there in the first place. Programmatic buying is indeed the renaissance of traditional media buying, and like all things in life, it shouldn't be something that is taken for granted. Programmatic brings a lot to the table in the online advertising industry, yet its complexity and esoteric nature requires all participants to really understand what it is and stay up to date with the latest innovations. Each player discussed in the webinar plays a key role in the functionality of programmatic, and none of them should be overlooked. And as the technology behind programmatic continues to progress, the programmatic industry will keep evolving. And as this unceasing evolution continues, it will eventually address and hopefully overcome the challenges and obstacles facing the industry, providing an optimal media buying and selling environment for all the parties involved. If you want to check out more If you want to learn more about programmatic buying, you should check out the Ultimate Guide to Programmatic Buying. It's available on AdClarity's blog, which is www.adclarity.com/blog. You'll see it on the left-hand side in the sidebar. It's the second ebook. The first ebook is also really great. So go ahead and click it, and it'll send you a copy of the ebook, which reiterates most of the information, if not more, of what we talked about today. I'm sorry we don't have time for questions today. It took a little longer than I expected, but all the contact information and everything you need is in the Ultimate Guide to the Evolution of Programmatic Buying ebook. Go ahead and download it, enjoy it. I'd love feedback and comments, and I really hope that today's webinar taught you everything you needed to know about programmatic. So thank you.